I'm in my 30s, and as a performance nutritionist working on my doctorate, I spend a lot of time digging into the science of health and longevity. But here's the thing, knowing the research is one thing, but actually applying it to my own life is another. In this video, I'll break down exactly what I'm doing right now to stack the odds in my favor for a longer, healthier life. From fine-tuning my diet and exercise routines to surprisingly small habits that make a big impact. I'll show you the blueprint I'm building not just to survive, but to thrive well into my later years. Most importantly, I'm going to focus on the 80-20. That is the things that give me the biggest return on investment. I'm not a billionaire like Brian Johnson, whose only goal is not to die. Like you, I have a family, I run a business, I'm doing research, and I try to maintain some level of sanity. If you're curious about what's backed by science and evidence and what's just hype, stick around. So let's dive in. Before we do, if you're interested in a free 360 audit report to see where you rank with your health and longevity and your low-hanging fruit, click the link below this video or go to 360audit.net. Your 30s are this unique point in life. You're young enough that your body is still resilient, it bounces back faster, you can build muscle more easily, and your metabolism hasn't started to slow down yet. But you're also old enough to understand the long-term game. Think about it. When you're in your 20s, the idea of preparing for your 70s or 80s might seem abstract, almost irrelevant. But by your 30s, you've likely seen enough, whether it's aging parents, relatives battling chronic diseases or illnesses, or even shifts in how your own body feels, to realize that what you do today will either pay off in the future or catch up with you in the years to come. Now, of course, this is all relevant for those who are over 30 years old. You could make excuses that it's going to be harder, which is often true, but complaining won't make you any younger. My shift toward prioritizing longevity wasn't just professional, it was deeply personal. Over the last few years, a series of events pushed me to take action. I dealt with unexpected health issues that required extensive testing. I started feeling joint aches I'd never imagined I'd ever feel in my 30s, and I started to get a receding hairline, which I actually don't care about that much. On top of that, I lost my dad and several close friends, which hit hard. Seeing the people that I loved leave so soon made me confront the reality of aging and mortality. These experiences weren't just wake-up calls, they were a clear message. Now is the time to take control of my health for the long term. And as a registered performance nutritionist, food is where I started. And this is probably the longest lever for most people because it doesn't have to take up much time. In the past, I was your quintessential bodybuilder. I really only cared about calories, protein, and building muscle. As long as I wasn't getting too fat, I didn't care that much about what I ate, at least within reason. I just assumed I was healthy. I was muscular and I wasn't fat, so those two things combined just put me above average. But after getting some chest pains and then some extensive blood work, I realized that I had high levels of blood pressure and also LDL cholesterol, both major risk factors for heart disease. So to rectify these issues, here is what I did and still do with my food and why. Number one is cut calories to lose fat. As a bodybuilder, apart from a few weeks every few years, I was always bulking, meaning I would look great when it was leading up to a competition, but 99% of the time I was carrying excess body fat so I could gain more muscle and lift more weight. Being over 20% body fat for a man is just going to increase your risk of health issues. In fact, this one study looking at over 100,000 adults found that as a man, if you're over 25% body fat, you're basically guaranteed to have a massively increased risk of cardiovascular disease compared to those who are leaner. Now, it doesn't mean that you're all gravy below this level, it's just at this point things start to go exponential. So for me, I'm trying to get as lean as I possibly can, while also not tanking my energy, my libido, and my performance, or just life in general. And that's probably around 12 to 13% body fat for me, and I can and have gotten leaner many times, but it's just not worth it beyond that point for me. So I monitor my body weight and my calories most days, and at the time of making this video, I'm about 30 pounds lighter than I was at my peak. The next thing I focus on is my fruit and vegetable intake. I'm not a vegan or a vegetarian, but eating more fruits and vegetables is probably something that most non-vegans or vegetarians can do to improve their overall health and well-being. Some research even suggests that up to 10 servings of combined fruits and vegetables per day leads to the best health outcomes. Put it this way, 75% of American adults don't even eat one piece of fruit on any given day. Honestly, I don't eat 10 servings of fruits and vegetables per day, but I do try to get as much as I can in most meals. My philosophy is not let perfect be the enemy of good. Instead, I aim to be consistent. I add berries to my breakfast, I focus on less perishable fruit like apples and bananas, and I eat lots of dried and frozen fruits and vegetables. The different benefits that you get from different plants can be obtained by just basically choosing different colors, and that's what I do. Here are my 4 pillars I have for nutrition that dictate everything that I do. Number 1, eat at least a gram of protein per pound of body weight every day, using protein powder if necessary. Number 2, eat home-cooked, minimally processed foods at least 80% of the time, with room for more enjoyable foods around 10 to 20% of the time. Number 3, when traveling away from home for business purposes, aim to only eat fruits and veggies and protein. When it's a vacation, I might be a little bit more flexible than that. And number 4, eat for heart health. This is something that I completely neglected in the past. I just didn't know any better, and there's very few people online talking about it. This means reducing my saturated fat intake from butters, fatty cuts of meat, cheeses, creams, and opting for healthier fats like nuts, seeds, olive oils, and start taking some plant sterols or drinks like Benecol. Over the last few years, I've also monitored my sodium intake and swapped salt for low salt substitutes which are higher in potassium, and this has massively reduced my overall blood pressure. This 4th pillar is so crucial because cardiovascular issues are so common when people get into their 50s, 60s and 70s, but are the result of your lifestyle from decades before. If you don't know your blood pressure and your lipids, get them checked as soon as possible. This one piece of advice alone could literally save your life, and that's not an exaggeration. Even though it seems to be really popular in the longevity space, fasting doesn't really seem to translate to any real benefits in humans outside of just controlling overall calories, at least based on the current level of evidence that we have. So personally, I choose to direct my efforts to what we do know has more certainty and impacts on longevity. Next is training, and this is something that I've always loved to do, with weightlifting being my go-to choice for most of my life. In fact, at my current age, I've been lifting for more than half of my life. At this point, gaining any more muscle mass for me though isn't going to improve my health. We start to see a flat line in the benefits of gaining more muscle once we hit a fat-free mass index of around 20, and mine's already above that. The same goes for the actual active lifting weights. As they say, use it or lose it, but the amount of time that's actually optimal for lifting weights with regards to health is a lot less than most people think. 30 to 60 minutes total per week, that's all that's really needed according to this meta-analysis. Now of course, if you want to maximally build muscle for performance or aesthetic purposes, you're going to need a lot more than that, with this recent paper even showing that up to 52 sets for one muscle group can lead to increased gains. But you'd basically have to be living in the gym to achieve that, and this may piss off a lot of bodybuilders and gym bros, but if you're limited on time, spending hours in the gym lifting weights at the expense of doing cardio probably isn't the best idea if longevity is a priority. And this is the reason that I personally only lift weights for around 45 minutes 3 times per week. I don't just have the time within the context of my other life goals. For way too long, I only saw cardio as like a way to burn calories, and I absolutely hated it, but the evidence is just so clear that the fitter you are, the healthier you'll be. So I do as much cardio as I realistically can, which is about 4 hours per week, and it's a mix of running and the elliptical with a little bit of basketball thrown in here or there. The higher my VO2 max is, which is a measure of how much oxygen my muscles use during exercise, the longer my health span will be, and of course that translates to everybody else as well. Now I know podcast health influencers like Rhonda Patrick and Dr. Andrew Huberman will tell you about the best high intensity protocol for increasing your VO2 max. It might be the 4x4 Norwegian method or something else, but when we look at long-term studies, lower intensity is just as good, it just takes longer. Now anyone that does run or do any kind of high level form of cardio like cross-country skiing or something will tell you that you're not going to interval your way to a high level of fitness. Your body will just be so beat up that you won't be able to recover and you'll just get injured. And this is the issue that I have with some health podcasts looking at short-term studies. Sure, if you just want to get your VO2 max as high as possible in the next 6 weeks, intervals are best, but you need to think long term. In fact, the biggest predictor of performance in Kenyan elite marathon runners is total weekly distance, followed second by the amount of easy runs that they do. I like to follow the Maffetone method with my cardio. That's 80% in zone 2 or easy and 20% harder work. The reality is, for most people, if you want to get fitter, you just need to do more low intensity cardio, with the amount of weekly volume of running being directly correlated with how fast you run a marathon and ultimately how fit you are. And easy cardio probably means a lot of walking until you get fitter. At least that's the experience I have with a lot of clients I work with. Sleep is a big one, and you probably already know that. And although I have fitness trackers that measure my sleep, I don't really put too much stock into their accuracy. At least 7 hours of sleep per night seems to be the most important thing, but also the consistency of going to bed and getting up at the same time. This paper, using data from the UK Biobank, found that sleep regularity index was actually a greater predictor of death than sleeping too little. I actually have sleep blocked out in my Google Calendar every day because working for myself, I can have very poor boundaries. So every night at 9 p.m, my phone sends me a notification to say that, Adam, it's time to start getting ready to go to bed. Now, outside of physical aspects of improving my health, there are other science-based but often abstract things that can improve overall well-being and, of course, longevity. Number 1 is learning, consistently challenging my mind with difficult but growth-focused tasks that keep my brain healthy. Number 2 is relationships. It can be easy to cut off people when you become hyper-focused on improvement, and I've seen this firsthand with friends who've become really successful in business, but they lose connections as a result. And number 3 is purpose. This paper specifically showed that those who had more purpose in life lived longer. I personally wrestled with this for many years, working in Amazon and making a 6-figure salary, but I knew it wasn't my purpose. So over the last number of years, I put myself in a position to do a master's in the evening and then at the weekends, and then ultimately into the doctorate, which I'm doing now, and my own coaching business. This doesn't mean you have to quit your day job. In the research paper, working with charities or even having a passionate hobby counted as a meaningful purpose. Even making these videos is something that has given me a sense of meaning over the last number of years. As you can see, I don't focus on the latest research chemicals, peptides, or taking off-label medications. Maybe these things make some difference when you have everything else dialed in, but I'm still working on that myself. At this stage, I'm old enough to see how these small choices that I make today will compound over decades. It's like planting seeds. Maybe you don't see the results tomorrow, but in 20, 30, or even 40 years down the line, these choices will bear fruit. The key is consistency, not perfection. Whether it's dialing your diet, showing up for your workouts, or just getting a little more sleep, every small win adds up. And remember, it's not just about how long you're here, it's about the quality of life. Living longer is great, but living better, feeling sharp, strong, and energized, that's the real goal. If you got any questions about what I'm doing, or there's something interesting or specific you want me to dive deeper into, let me know in the comments. And if you want to learn about the best diets for longevity, then check out this video I made here.